No, it's all good. I just got done training for a couple hours, and I need to start getting to work, so it's all good.
Now, how long have you been announcing, and how did you initially get involved with the Ultimate Fighting Championship?
You know, basically when the UFC came on the scene in 1993 and, pretty much blew everybody away, I've been in martial arts since I was 12. And since I, started training in judo, and I've trained in various different styles, and I'm very passionate about the arts, and I've always been passionate about fighting because I've been a huge boxing fan. My grandfather was champion of the world in 1921 in the bantamweight featherweight division. He's in the history books, and he's under Johnny Buff. And so, fighting's in my blood. And when the UFC came on the scene, it added that old story about which is the greatest style, all the Bruce Lee movies and everything, and it kind of brought it all to reality for a lot of people. But, a lot of this I was already quite aware of, so I was really enthralled because now it was coming into the USA in a media way that could be appreciated. But, it needed a lot of work back then, and I got involved with them because I was managing and am managing my brother, Michael Buffer. I've managed his career for 20 years, at least 18, and when it came on the scene, I wanted to put Michael in every form of sports and entertainment there was. And my immediate reaction, rather than trying to go in for myself, was to obviously have Michael do the show. And I had him do 6, 7, and Ultimate. And then we had a big deal with the wrestling leagues back then, and we had to make a choice about who to stay with. But it would have been hard for Michael to continue announcing UFC because he's in such great demand in so many other areas, especially, he is the preeminent boxing, greatest boxing announcer that ever lived.
Right.
So with that in mind, he left and they brought somebody else in. And I was trying to figure out how could I possibly get into the octagon because I would like to, start and possibly end my announcing career in this sport. And that's how I felt back then. And I thought the UFC was going to get huge. I always did from the beginning. So, long story cut short, and I'm being kind of wordy here, and I apologize.
No problem. Take your time.
Okay, I managed a fighter named Scott the Pitbull Ferrazzo in the UFC 8 in Puerto Rico. And before I went down there, I called up Robert Meyerowitz, who owned the company then, and I said, listen, I'm bringing down my tux. Let me go in the octagon. Let me do the preliminary bouts. And, then Rich G. and I can start off the normal show, and he agreed. And so I went down, and, I did my first job in the UFC, and I felt good about it. And, scared back then, or not scared, rather. I was never scared, nervous, but back then, because, you walk out, never walk down in front of 15, or rather, probably 8,000 people at that time, to announce. I mean, I'd done a lot of motivational speaking, but then you got the TV staring you in the face, too. And so, it's an adjustment. And so you do the best job you can. But I listened to myself back then, and I put my hands over my ears and go, no.
Really?
Yeah, it's okay. It's all part of the process. So they didn't call me back, and then they asked me to be on Friends. Oh, they asked me to come back and do UFC 10, which I did. Then they didn't call me back, and no matter what I did, I wasn't getting the job. And then they called me and asked me to co-star in Friends as myself, as the UFC announcer. And when I was on set after I agreed to do it with Tank Abbott and John McCarthy, I went to the owner again, and I said, look, I'm on Friends. This is the biggest comedy on TV. Everybody's going to think I'm the announcer, just like John's John and Tank's Tank. Let's make a deal. I should announce every UFC, and that was the best program I ever played in my life. And that was back in 97.
Just as a fighter would train and take care of their body before a fight, I would imagine you would do the same in regards to your voice. How do you go about keeping your voice in check after calling so many fights, and what kind of preparation goes into calling a fight?
As far as my voice is concerned, the voice, whatever's involved, the throat, the chords, the esophagus, whatever's involved, I think my voice has gotten, my machine or my tool has gotten stronger, just like a fighter gets better and stronger as they continue to fight, or just like you lift weights for a body part and it gets stronger. As far as practice, I never practice, I never rehearse. What I concentrate on doing is just taking care of my body as a whole, eating as healthy as I can, staying as healthy as I can, enjoying myself as much as I can in the process, and staying in shape. I've been an athlete my whole life, and as long as my body holds up, I'll continue to train.
Now, Bruce, explain the Buffer 180 and the Buffer 360 to the listeners.
Well, the 180 is, all announcers, with all respect, they stand and they concentrate on their voice, which they should, because that's what an announcer does. My passion for the sport of MMA, my passion for the UFC is huge, and it's growing all the time. So I get very energetic. I feed off the energy of the crowd, and it's not show business, it's show biz. I mean, I'm there to entertain, but at the same time, I'm there to announce, I'm there to entertain, but I'm there to have fun. Because honestly, I'm passionate because I'm having fun, and I love it, and I love the sport, and everybody involved in it, fighters, everybody, fans. it's a great experience. But when that passion starts to wane, then I'll consider stepping down. So out of that comes my movement. And I've always been physical. I don't stand still. I don't stand in the center of the octagon and turn cards. I throw cards and I move. If you've ever been to a live event, I mean, I never turn a card. I throw a card. I'm done with that card. Get rid of here. Get out of here. I gotta get going. I mean, that's the way I feel. It's not about poise. And then I get the emotion going because these guys have trained for like 2 to 3 months. This is the champion. Let's take an example. This is 5 rounds for the lightweight championship of the world between DJ Penn and Frankie Edgar.
Right.
It's all come to this moment. It's time. That's what it's all about. So the 180, one time when I was introducing the blue corner, which is the first corner you introduce, I happened to be staring directly at the red corner. And in that millisecond of a moment, left to right brain, I told myself, you're staring at the red corner. You got to get over here. So I used to have a really good spinning bottom fist, when it's kickboxing. So I just literally just torqued my body in front as quickly as I could. And I snapped it, and then the word fighting came out, and the audience reacted, and I thought, wow, not bad. I kind of like that. Feels good. Loosens up my body. Yeah, we'll try this out. So I use it for the main events and the co-main events. And Joe Rogan is a big reason why the 360 came about, because he was the one who was filming me one day, and he asked me, because he loved the 180, how could I top it? I said, well, I could probably do a 360. And then, he pushed the fact, and then I did one for him just off the cuff in a long sports coat, in street shoes for his camera, and he made a video out of it, and then it became kind of viral on the internet to where now this was the big thing. Would I ever do a 360? And I said, I'll do it at a special event, and that special event was UFC 100, and it was staring Brock Lesnar in the face. And like Joe said when he sent me that video, he said, not only did you pull the 360 and Roy Lesnar's name, but you didn't, it blew us all away, but you did it in front of the biggest, baddest white mofo on the planet.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So it's all fun. It's all everything. I'm 53 years old, so don't start crying for, double back 180s and stuff like that. I mean, the bottom line is I don't know what I'm going to do till I do it, and that's the moment I make the decision.
Now, being as though you've announced thousands of matches, I'm sure, are there certain fighters whose names you prefer announcing?
No, I actually just prefer to announce anybody that's in there. Well, let me take that back. If you were to ask me what are some of my favorite fighters to announce,
right,
I'll give you that answer. Basically, because everybody else to me I give everybody equal treatment. Some people have more meat to their introductions. Obviously, Randy Couture. There's just so much meat to his introduction, and you've got to get it out. Chuck Liddell, Huntington Beach Bad Boy, Rampage. But it's not just their name. It's just when they're in the ring with me, like in the octagon with me, rather. Like Dan Hardy. When I'm introducing Dan Hardy, and we're kind of like two singers doing a duet up there as I'm introducing him, and he's pretty much mouthing everything I say back to me. So there's so many memories. I've forgotten more than I can remember in most cases. That's why it's hard. If you ever ask me what are my favorite fights, every time I see one, another one comes along 3 months later, and there's just a batch of great fights. That's what's so beautiful about the UFC.
What match that you've announced during your career has meant the most to you?
There's certain events or matches that were stages, not just for me, but for the organization as a whole. And one of those would have been, like, for instance, the first time Tito Ortiz met Ken Shamrock at the MGM. I forget the number, 43 or whatever, but the energy and excitement in the arena on that given night was just it was the next level. It was the next level completely, because the build-up was just so big for that fight.
Now, there's a story about an altercation involving Frank Trigg and yourself in an elevator. Can you explain the story to the listeners?
Well, I'll tell it briefly. I don't want to go through the whole thing, because quite honestly, if you do Google Frank Trigg talks about fight with Bruce Buffer in an elevator, you'll get his radio show, and you'll hear him tell it, and that's the best way to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But Frank and I are friends, and Frank at the time, one of the top 10 welterweights in the world, was weighing around 195, hair growing out, and we had just had a show at the Spike show at the Hard Rock, and we happened to be with Mike Goldberg, and we were all together, and we're walking in the elevator, and there's Dana White and his security man, Tom. And before the doors closed, Frank was immediately, when can I get back in the octagon? As Frank would do, Frank's a strong character. And I had stepped in front of Frank's vision of Dana, as I was walking in to look at Dana's wristband, and because he had this cool wristband, and I'm a watch freak. And I caught a ridge hand to the throat. And I turned around, it was Frank, and I'm like, Frank, you hit me. Why the blank did you hit me? And he said the wrong thing to me. He said, what are you going to do about it? Acting all tough. And I just reacted, and I punched him twice in the stomach, up, down. And that's where it started. So doors closed, 10 floors, we're having fun. and everybody else is peeled up against the side of the elevator while Frank and I go at it. And then when the doors open on the bottom, we decided to stop because you can sit out in the glass out there in the hard rock. It's dangerous. It's bad. That's bad public opinion. You know what the kind of stuff you get out. So we stopped it real quick, but I had blood up and down my shirt. My finger was peeled back to the bone, and I guess I kind of busted it up in one of his belt buckles or his ring, or God knows what Frank was wearing. And I wound up getting stitches and going out having a nice time, and I announced the UFC that night, got a friendly tete-a-tete with Frank Trigg, and as Dana will tell it, as he told everybody, he'll tell you, I definitely, did what I had to do and held my own, quite definitely. So it was a fun night. Felt like I was 25 years old all over again. That's the short version. You want to hear the real longer version, then go forward. But I will tell you that Frank will admit that he almost shat his pants because he felt his ribs touching each other. So he paid homage to my punch.
Changing gears a bit, I heard an interesting story that Michael Buffer is actually your half-brother, and that you guys hadn't actually met until about 20 years ago. Can you shed some light on that claim?
Michael was my half-brother. We had the same father, and Michael, as the life has it, wound up, being the greatest boxing announcer, sports entertainment announcer of all time, and building his career. And I saw a star there, and I saw a future star for him, and I wanted to put him in every form of sports and entertainment, and start, making products and trademarking this phrase correctly, to his famous phrase, his 5-word phrase. And so we met because I saw him on TV. I found out he was my half-brother, and then it was just a few short years later that I basically gave up 2 full-time businesses, doing quite well back then, to pursue a dream of building this brand and building his image and marketing it to where it's gotten today. And I'm quite proud of all that, and we make a great team. He's a great guy, and he's the best at what he does.
Now, you're the president and CEO of Buffer Enterprises. Talk a little bit about Buffer Enterprises and exactly what the company does.
Well, it's a sports and entertainment company, so it does whatever I want it to do. And usually that's following my private business ventures, and as we've been talking about on the phone here, and stuff like that. There's lots going on, lots to be covered, and it covers everything. And it's also a development company for TV shows and entertainment projects, which more will be talked about in the future.
And now, lastly, before we get going, did you ever imagine you would see the day where your image was used in video games and action figures?
Never saw it as a kid. You dream about it, and in your own little way, as we all do, whether it's you dream of the guy running down with the football 98 yards for the touchdown, or raising your arms in victory in the octagon. And we all have our ways of seeing where we would like to be. So yeah, but then it came into reality as this started to grow. I mean, I saw where it was going to happen, because basically that's the same. Through marketing and everything else, I had the pleasure when boxing was in its heyday. My brother, who's been popular forever and will continue to be so, but I was able to take that and and wrestling as it was doing its thing, and there were action figures of Michael and still stuff coming out. So it's all part of the ball game. It's all, everything in life is having a solid product and marketing it correctly.
Now, Bruce, is there anything you'd like to say to the fans and listeners before we get going?
I have my own radio show, my podcast at bufferzone.net, www.bufferzone.net. Plenty of videos and all of that there. It's Time Radio is a lifestyle station. We talk UFC, and we talk, as the pun goes, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So basically, we talk life. And it's a pretty wild show, and I have guests from all over. I have poker pros. I have famous MMA stars. I had the gentleman Stephen Moyer, the star of True Blood, on about 4 weeks ago, 2 months ago. So we vary it up. So come listen to me. I'm live every Tuesday on this podcast.
Once again, Bruce, we just want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to speak with Cage Religion Radio.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. You guys have asked a couple times, apologize, but here we go, and there you are.